Alright, so here we have the path for Groundhog. Now this one had a few interesting things in it. Not all of the activations were that interesting, but I think the vast majority of them had something going on that was a bit unusual. So we'll start off at the beginning, as we always do. Some whammies in the first phrase, short whammies, they don't really matter that much though. Getting all the whammy in this second phrase is the most important part, because I think we might get to full bar, or at least very close to it, if we whammy all of this as much as we can. So yeah, important whammies here. I think these are all hammer-ons, so no excuse for not getting a lot of whammy out of here. Okay, first activation point was right here. The third green, yellow, blue chord is what I was remembering there. People were activating a bit earlier, and I think they were on a different path than I was, and it was probably a bit better than this one. But this first activation was a bit cool anyway, because we activate here and we end up, the activation ends on this green, yellow, blue sustain here, so we whammy this for just a little bit more star power and get a bit like more ticks than we would if we were activating on the second one. So although that does leave you with a bit of a star power deficit for the next activation, which I guess screws it up a bit, but at least I would have that number one for the first activation. So yeah, pretty interesting thing. The only instance I think of whammying, well, probably not the only instance, it could happen, but this one was, there was no way of overlapping if we whammied the sustain while under star power. So yeah, activation 1, unusual. So we'd get this phrase, and the next phrase is similar to the first one. Not the first one, but this long one. So we're going to be whammy as much as possible. And second activation, we're just waiting for the second green, yellow, blue chord this time. It's on a measure, really easy to remember. So yeah, just been activating on green, yellow, blues thus far. And in this activation, we're going to be overlapping this phrase, which is a little bit tight, but not that tight. And especially it's okay, especially if we remember that we need to whammy these sustains here. And that was just a case of remembering at the start of the phrase, hey, you need to whammy here. And yeah, the activation would end, and that's activation 2. I think Moose was saying at least his activation was a bit later or something, and it yielded more points, so I guess that's generated a different path, maybe an earlier whammy path or something. But this was okay. Next phrase, few short whammies, and the phrase after that, quite the opposite, some long whammies. This is pretty much exactly the same as the second phrase in the song. So yeah, we want to be on very close to full bar at this point. And the activation point is just the second chord. So for once we're not actually activating on a green, yellow, blue, we're activating the note after that. And we have an overlap here, which is just a simple overlap. Just remember to whammy. And yeah, it would end. That's the third activation. Now, at this point, we have 4 phrases before our next activation. So we don't need to whammy any of these notes, which is nice. Or this one note, this is actually the only one that has any whammy in, but we don't need to whammy this note because we're getting 4 phrases. 1, 2, 3, 4 before the next activation. And this activation may be the most valuable in the song. Maybe not, I don't know. I think all the activations are pretty important in this song. Now, this one has an overlap as well. It says to activate right here, and since we're on full bar, it would just be a case of squeezing to get this overlap. But for me, I couldn't do that. I couldn't get this overlap if I activated here. So instead, at first, I was activating, surprise surprise, on a green, yellow, blue chord here at the start of measure 116, and then later I decided we'd drop it back half a bar and get these 4 notes in as well, because it's such a short space of time, and we get like 800 extra points instead of I don't know, 200 in exchange, so probably a 600 point gain from moving that back half a bar. And it makes the overlap a lot easier, delaying it from here at least. And this overlap's a bit weird because it's whammying while we have notes going on top, so it's extended sustains whammies, and these are also tap notes, so this is a really weird phrase in general. But I would just be basically whammying all the way through the phrase, and because of that I would happen to be whammying these notes as well and getting the overlap. So yeah, that's that activation, and then the final activation is actually pretty fine. I'd changed it again, but we have two phrases with no whammy, and yeah, it says to activate here. I went for the measure. I think this time, instead of it being for, well, obviously there's no overlap or anything, I just did it there for convenience's sake, and instead of ending on this note, we'd be ending right here on this green orange chord, the last note of the song. I would squeeze that in, and yeah, 512. I'd be getting about 509, maybe 508. 510 was the best I ever got with this path. So I'm missing out on some points, and there was a better path, I'm pretty sure, that yielded more points. But yeah, this was it was good enough, you know. If it wasn't a double FC, this would definitely be enough to win the song. So yeah. Speaking of FCing, we'll talk about the notes now.
Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the notes for Groundhog 115. This one had a lot of unconventional stuff in it, so there was a few points where I needed to make methods up for it, or, you know, strum patterns up. It's not quite a WTF this, but it's some parts of it could be considered that way. In fact, I would say it probably is a WTF this, but after learning these like methods or making it consistent, it's not so bad. So yeah, from the beginning, this section exists for some reason. Intro. Just using all the little gimmicky parts. This part is pretty much fine. When we get to trial 1, this is pretty much fine as well. I just use everything. Nothing that I use to stay consistent here. Trial 1's pretty easy. I don't think anyone had really trouble with that. Not bad is fine. Trial 2. Now this is where we start getting arguably the WTF diss sort of thing. So a lot of mix of tap notes and hopos and that sort of thing. So what I would do, I guess I'll break it down. So obviously strumming the strum note, I'd strum the chord as well, because that's on a beat. And be strumming everything else. And Clone here, I can be generous with that. So basically strumming everything other than the parts that are too fast to strum everything for. So leaving those quads unstrummed, that trill unstrummed. And at the end here, strumming these hammer-ons and taps as well. So yeah, the only parts we're not strumming are those notes before this chord here. The taps here, these 9 notes, maybe the red at the beginning I would strum sometimes, but not necessary. But even strumming that hammer-on at the bottom of that, because I believe that's on a beat. Not strumming the first note of the trill, but only the first note. And strumming everything else, as usual. And although Clone Hero can have a tendency to overstrum, it's not that bad. I didn't really have any trouble with it overstrumming once I knew what I was doing. So yeah, basically erasing the WTF dissness of the song by strumming the vast majority of it there. Now let's step it up. There was at least one weird part. This is a phrase, so it can make the like tap notes and strums a little bit more invisible. Like it's harder to tell the difference. But it's the same thing as the intro. Now those like little 3 notes there where it went from blue to yellow, blue to orange, they sort of just happen out of nowhere. So we just play them as they are. Hit the blue and then hammer on the yellow beneath, and then hit orange. So I'm not going to rewind to show that, but that was a little thing that existed. And then there was this little weird part, and I basically just hit it as it was and use the taps. Can you see how that is there? So it's basically this part really. The first couple of notes aren't anything. So the first 3 notes are the same as the bit we just played earlier. And then basically below that we're just almost doing a red blue, orange blue red triplet down. That's not too much of a problem, but it is kind of a weird looking part. Trial 3 is pretty easy. Trial 4 is also pretty easy. But I will at least... Right, Trial 4 does have something at least I want to talk about. So when it changes to this thing, we're just strumming everything and continuing to anchor green as well. Because anchoring green there will make sure these double blues don't actually register. Right, and now this section. This is a proper mess of a section. So I just strummed everything, but it's not just strumming everything like in the fashion that it shows. What I did, I just completely ignored the single notes. So we have green red at the bottom here, where it's just red notes, we're just pretending that's green red, and the same with the single blue there, we're just pretending that's yellow blue, and strumming everything, so it looks like this. The strum pattern is easy, it's just 2/4. I also strummed all the notes at the end there. This makes this part free. You could do it this way, you just anchoring green red all the way beneath the whole time, but I opted not to do that. Because if you try and use like the hammer-ons or whatever, it's just a mess. I'm just strumming all of those because we're already strumming every note anyway, so we might as well strum those ones as well. Trial 5. Now there isn't too much I did here except for basically strum everything except these quick descending chords. So just strumming everything except the chords. So trial 5 is actually pretty okay. Same thing twice in a row, and then strumming everything here. It does make those chord transitions change on up strums, but that isn't really too much of an issue because it doesn't happen for very long, and you know, if you're hitting the rest of the song you can probably change on an up strum. It's not a deal breaker. And once again, strumming the very end there. So I'll try 5 once more. Just random miss there. Now for these little notes here, I would tend to release them before strumming again, just because they're a bit slower. I don't know. It just seemed to make it even less likely to overstrum doing it that way. So, and this that's an upstrum, that chord. strumming these again. Right, that's the same thing. And then we get the hardest part of the song, for me at least. Now this is a proper mess. And it's got rid of the first note, but that's fine, because we can just select the section. So, trying to like slide up for these blue-orange notes makes it so awkward. So I opted to do the whole thing in first position. And just stretch to hit those blue-orange. So we're sort of in like green, red, blue, orange position when we're hitting those grace notes there. And as far as tackling the double reds, I would just strum it when it's a quick double red in a row. Otherwise I would release red and reapply. And we're anchoring green the entire time. And then this part is actually it's okay. It's kind of just like a it's kind of like a green, red, blue chimney with the yellows in between them. Misjudged that one there. And this is still awkward for me. Yeah, and if you hit that better than I did just there, there's a single red strum before it. But once you get into like the motion of hitting those chords, it's alright. All in first position, and then as far as this goes, I'm just strumming everything. Activation is there. So yeah, strumming everything at the end, but this trial 6, the start of trial 6 is the hardest part of the song. And then squeezing in the last note, see if we can with the start part path. But yeah, that's Groundhog. Very unconventional song, unconventional notes. Kind of a WTF this song, but yeah, possible to get consistent at it. So we'll do another song now.
So you want to be a DJ? It's going to take an awful lot of practice. Are you ready? Well, let's find out, shall we? Not bad, but let's face it, that was easy. Why don't we take this to the next level? Come on, let's go. See, that was impressive. I think it's time I introduce you to a friend of mine. Let's call it feedback. Shall we see how clever you really are? It's time to sort out the men from the boys. Wow. Watch out. Wow. This is no time to coach. Oh my goodness. Cripes. Well, it looks like we're coming to the end. So far, so good. But do you really think you have what it takes to compete with the mighty scratch perverts? This could be a step a bit hard. You should quit. Come on, quit. Sorry, am I putting you off? Don't fall apart now. Ooh, that's fast. There's really no point. I warned you. Have I really met my match?
Okay, so that was a Groundhog 115. 509, I think 510 was the best I ever got in practice. This is better than I would normally get in a tournament setting. I think I was normally getting about 508. But yeah, that is that. And the next song is the final song, which is Rise with the Angels.